Hello and welcome again. So in the last streaming, we got an idea of how to set up a quick or a React application from scratch and how to deploy it to production with Netlify. Of course, it makes sense that we build a fully fledged application, and what I would like to discuss today with you is what we're going to build. So what exactly are we going to build? What are some of the requirements, some of the things we would like to have in the app? We'll then talk a little bit about the different aspects, different dimensions of developing a web application. And then we move on to a little bit more practical stuff and doing a little bit of TDD with the React testing library, the user events library, and React apps. So I'm really excited about today, and I'm glad you're here, and I hope you enjoy. If there are any questions or anything, just ping me in the chat. Hopefully, I don't know how long it's going to take until the spammers start posting messages. I hope they don't. Yeah, it's a little bit annoying, but anyway, I enjoy the interaction. So I hope we can find a solution. I hope we can find a way. Let's see here. Should be this one, exactly. There you go. So hopefully you can see my screen now. And here are a couple of things we're gonna do. So first, a little introduction. The idea is to go maybe for roughly an hour. I wouldn't like to go for longer than that. Actually, previous experience was tough to go for a long time. And yeah, let's hopefully stick to this 1 hour. Let's see how far we can come. So to begin with, what are we actually building here? And I took the time to think about what I want to develop, because as I said in the previous video, this is something that the main goal is to fulfill one of my personal needs for better organization, just to be more organized and to be able to better manage my time. So it's kind of a productive app, productivity app, but with a few tweaks so that I can make things a little bit easier for me to manage my productivity. Thanks, Anna. Glad to be back. Cool. So I divided into two versions, which is, I think, good practice. Let's think about the first one, which would be the MVP. And then there is a second version, which we will continue developing. There is, of course, a third version and a fourth version and like many different things that we're going to do. But I want to limit the scope. And this is perhaps a good practice in general in the industry. You normally want to limit the scope of what you want to develop to come to an end. There is this idea that there are always more features to be developed, but you really need to understand what are the features that bring the most value in whatever app you are developing. And this is perhaps the idea of the MVP, is what is the minimal set of the most value-adding features that I need to develop and to deliver to my final customer, whatever that customer is, so that I'm delivering the most value in a reasonable time frame. If it takes too long, then I may miss, for example, a market opportunity. And so this is the idea of the MVP. And for me here, an MVP is pretty much like this. I just want to add, edit, delete, and complete tasks. I want to be able to add a start time and end time and deadlines for the tasks. And I also want to schedule recurring tasks. I want to be able to create projects, and I want to be able to associate tasks with these projects. And I want to have the idea of not completing a task. So not marking a task as completed does not have the same psychological effect, at least on me, as marking a task explicitly as not completed. I think that it's, let's say, quote unquote, more shameful to mark a task as explicitly not completed. So I want to have that. And it's a little bit of a nudge so that I'm encouraged to complete the things I propose to myself. I also I want to have a daily review of what has been accomplished on the day and what was different from the plan. And I also want to display the tasks in a list view, so just one on the top of each other, and probably order by start time, something maybe, could order by title, but I think that it makes more sense for from start time. And I also would like to be able to persist the data between page refreshes. That's kind of obvious, but if you use a React state, the state, depending on how you manage it, it's not going to be persisted between refreshes. And I also want to allow users to create accounts so that they can, so that we can offer basic syncing support between devices. And also the user should be able to delete their account and erase all their data. Okay, so this is like for the MVP. We'll see how many videos we need, and we'll see how my energy goes for the streamings. But once we are done with this, we'll actually have a fully functional app that can be used by everybody basically, which is pretty cool, right? That's pretty cool. So that's the goal. And once that is done, then we can start moving to the second version. And I would like to have a Pomodoro timer integrated into the app so that whenever I start with a task, I can actually easily or seamlessly use a Pomodoro timer. Would be nice to have a calendar view as well. So in addition to the list, also have a calendar view and some simple visualizations, maybe some charts or something that we could use to see our progress and how we move, how let's say our, I don't know, percentage of completed tasks moves along the days, or for example, if I estimate the project to take, like, let's say a project like an online course. Okay, the online course takes, I don't know, 30 hours. And how much of those 30 hours have I actually completed? So I think these kind of things are pretty cool. And that would be amazing to have as well, right? So this would be for the second version. Maybe like on a third version, it could be something like, I don't know, some automatic filling or distribution of tasks over the day so that everything is balanced out and you don't spend too much time without doing a certain task, so you can benefit from this compounding effect. Anyway, yeah, I just have a lot of ideas, and maybe because I have a lot of ideas, it's easier for you to understand why we need an MVP and then a second version so we can actually prioritize stuff. And this you will find wherever you go, or you should find wherever you go, this idea of prioritization. Actually, personally speaking, I think prioritization can benefit a lot from I think companies don't get it right most of the time, but that is just my very, let's say, personal opinion. I think that there are amazing tools out there that could actually help us put an actual value here on prioritization, and then help companies understand how to better prioritize their tasks. For example, cost of delay. If you are interested on that, just Google cost of delay. There are a lot of good sources about it, and yeah, I read a couple of papers and I was quite motivated by it. So I think that, I mean, this is an area, maybe we'll cover this in future videos. I don't know, I'm just so excited about it that maybe, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the second topic of the discussion, and is about whether we already need a backend. So what I normally find, and what I want to stay away from, right? So what I normally find and what I want to stay away from in those learning resources is that we quickly develop something so that we can have like kind of a sandbox backend against which we can do some API calls. However, there is hardly ever any concern with security or any concern with, I don't know, proper authentication or proper infrastructure, because it is a learning environment. It is assumed that, or I don't know, there is an assumption that you can simply drop these things, but But then again, what you learn on those learning environments, you cut it, and that's what you take to your work. And if you don't know this kind of stuff, then it's like there will be a big learning gap that you would have to fill. And that's okay, like you can feel it, but I just have the idea, I have the impression that this is also my responsibility. And it's also maybe one of the reasons why so many companies have such big problems with projects or developers. Like, the learning environment is not the same as the work environment. We hardly ever talk about I don't know, the top 10 security concerns that you should have when developing web applications on learning environments, except if you are taking a course about the top 10 security concerns when developing web applications. Now, that doesn't make sense to me. So I think I'm talking too much, but you get the idea. Is I just don't want to give you an unrealistic setup, right? I don't want to give you an unrealistic backend. And I'm actually interested in doing things properly, but at the same time, as you can see here on the first the first bullet point, doing things correctly, properly, but within a reasonable time limit. And I believe that's possible. So that's what I'm going to aim for. And that's why I wrote down a couple of things that we actually need to worry about when we are thinking about backends. So first of all, first and foremost, for everything, security. You know, you expose an API without proper security, without proper mechanisms to prevent, I don't know, DDoS attack or something, or without proper authentication, is a big problem, like a huge problem. So security is something that we need to really worry about. Then we need to worry about the proper deployment. How do you actually deploy your backend, your servers? Do you do a canary release? Do you do, I don't know, blue-green deployment? Is it blue-green? Green? I don't remember. But anyway, you get the idea. You deploy one instance, and then you will start putting the traffic there, and then you terminate the other one. But anyway, like how do we actually deploy things? How do you create an infrastructure and a pipeline to deploy stuff? This is really cool, and I really want to cover that. So when we come to the backend and we need it, we will definitely talk about all these things. We also have scalability. How do we set up everything so that our servers or our backends can scale seamlessly and support higher loads? How do we test that? How do we run stress tests on our application? How do we test the load, how well it can handle, how quickly it can scale? So how do we define monitoring and observability? How do we know what is going wrong when something is going wrong? How do we set up logging? How do we manage the infrastructure? It's a lot of stuff, right? And if I were just to put super simple server here for you, I would miss on all of these things that I'm interested in and I want to learn about. So we will come back to this. And why do we need a server? Actually, it's to basically cover these two final points here. Okay. The MVP requires users, because I want to sync stuff between devices. The MVP requires users to be able to create an account. Now, the moment I need to create an account, then I leave the sandbox of my browser. Until then, and as you can see, the whole application, everything can be done. Everything can be done until I need to create an account. So we can have a fully functional web app, and that's pretty much what we're going to do. We're going to have a fully functional web app without a backend. And then we're going to add a backend, and we'll see how things are going to go. Maybe we will need to add the backend a little bit before the end of the design of the web app, but I think it's also, and that brings me to my final point here. How do we solve the problem, right? So how do we actually develop an application without a backend? And the cool thing is we need to design our app so that the backend can be easily, effortlessly plugged in. So I like one a quote from who is it? Robert Martin. I don't remember which video, but if you watched the videos, you probably saw that. I like one of his quotes that says that the web app is an I/O device. Okay, so it should be plugged in to some business rules, and these business rules can be either on the browser itself, which is what we're going to do here, and maybe that's not the most recommended, but I don't know if it's not the most what would be the most recommended. But anyway, oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Glad to have you here. Cool. So, yeah, so we have the web app, which has a, let's say, which is an I/O device, and we have something else happening outside of this I/O device. And when we plug this web app into the business logic, the web app should work. Now, if this business logic is on the web browser, or if it is on the back end on the server, it doesn't matter. To the web app, it doesn't matter. The web app should be easily, effortlessly integrated into whatever source of business logic we have. My perception. Okay. Cool. So that being said, actually, I'm glad you wrote this, Paul, about the user stories. I just want to make one little comment about it, because I think that they are also, you have to get them right. I'm going to talk about it actually, maybe in the next streaming or something, maybe 2 streams from now. If you write a user story which says, maybe I can just write something like this. So let's say, I'm just gonna, as a user, I want to, I don't know, be able to purchase an item so that I can acquire something new. Okay, let's say I write something like this as a user story, and this is a very poor user story. So let me explain why. First thing is, from my perspective, and I would like to do a little bit more research and elaborate a little bit more on that, but maybe that explains why so many businesses don't use it, because they don't know how to use it effectively. First is as a user, right? Who is the user? User is basically everybody on the platform. So it's very hard to think about to whom does this user story apply. As a first thing, this here should be a real persona, right? This should be maybe as a website customer, or as, I don't know, as a married person, or as a manager in a company or something. So one of the personas to whom your business is delivering value. Now think about it. Okay, is my e-commerce store delivering value to every single person in the world? No, probably not. So who is your target, right? This would be then the SA, and then I want to be able to perform some action here, or have some interaction with whatever, so that, and then here comes actually the tricky part. And it's about, so that what? And from my perspective, this here, so that I can acquire something new, doesn't really tell me what is the value that I am delivering to my persona once this story is implemented. So when I think about value, which real problem, which life problem is this feature, is this story actually solving? So what is the real pain of the customer, or the real pain of the, not the customer, but of the persona that this story is helping to solve? And this gives a huge sense of context. This gives us a lot of information about the value and why is that story needed. And this also helps us prioritize, right? It helps us say, okay, this has maybe more value than that other story. So there is a lot of stuff about it, and I would definitely encourage you to do some research on it. I can also do it, and we can think about some user stories for the MVP here, so that we could write them down and have something meaningful. Actually, I do have already prepared a Trello board, and let me see, there you go. But I need to populate it, right? So maybe for the next streaming, that would be nice to have some stories here. And I do have some comments about all these little things here, whether they are necessary or not. But anyway, that is upcoming, right? Cool. So awesome. This was a little side comment. I think I can erase it for now. Let's move on to writing our components. And as I said in the first, by the way, little comment, if you try to access the Laura Miller to-do or whatever, you're not going to do it. So we're not going to manage to do it because I changed it to productive me. Okay, so that is the new URL, productive me. And that's because the app is to help me become productive, hopefully you. So that's the new URL, and I'm gonna add in the description of the video. So just keep that in mind. Awesome. Yeah, I think we can move forward. That was just 20 minutes. Let's start some of the let's install some of the dependencies here. And actually there is this discussion. Let's talk about what are React components, right? So I'm teaching React, I mean, yeah, quote unquote teaching. I don't want to take that responsibility. I'm just sharing how I do stuff, and you're free to choose and judge whether that is the best approach. Hopefully I can also share how to judge stuff, and yeah, that would be the best thing. The best thing ever is if I can share how to acquire a critical view to whatever code comes across your way. Not that I have a great critical view, but I'm looking and trying to improve it. Okay, so let's start with what are React components, right? And I have my IDE here, and if you remember from last time, we ended up with this little app thing here, which seems to be a function, right? If I were to just wrap this around curly braces and create a return statement, then you would have a fully fledged function here. Is there something missing? Yeah, okay. My prettier is going to start. Okay, I hope prettier doesn't start like doing a lot of stuff, but anyway, it's going to look ugly. But if it does, then maybe I'll change the setup for later on. If I take this and let me start my application, I'm not going to do TDD now. I'm going to start with TDD in a few minutes, because I just want to show you the idea of React components. So instead of, if you are familiar with HTML, right, this is simple and plain HTML. So instead of having a little text here, I'm just gonna have a header, right? And this is also HTML. I'm gonna have a navbar. This is also HTML. And you see the prettier is starting to annoy me. So let's format everything. Maybe I should format on save. I don't know. But anyway, we have a navbar here. Then we have a link, and that link has some href, let's say to my website, right? And I'm gonna improve the website. But anyway, if you want to follow it, I plan to write more articles soon. So here we would have, let's say, something my website, right? Cool. And that's probably maybe missing the HTTPS. Yeah. And once I save this, then you'll see here that everything is up to date. Once I click on my website, then it just takes me to my website. Now this is plain old HTML. And if I were to remove this, and all I'm gonna do is just gonna cut this thing, and I'm gonna export, or not export, but just define an arrow function, right? Just like this, like you would declare any arrow function in JavaScript or in TypeScript. And you would get something, to make prettier happy, you would get something like this, right? This is just an arrow function that returns me some HTML, and that's it. Now I take this arrow function, I paste it in here, and I save this, and there you go, things are still working just fine. So what happened here? Well, React components are for all the purposes and everything that we're gonna do, and probably 95% of the time for you, React components are supercharged HTML. Okay, so you can do a lot of stuff, but in the end, you gotta return HTML or another React component, which in turn returns some HTML. Okay, so that's basically, that's my understanding of it. I'm working with HTML, but I can split it up into reusable components, and I can have some JavaScript logic before returning it. I can actually return different stuff based on some state, based on whether, I don't know, there is a checkbox marked or not, or there is some data coming from the network. So everything that happens within this function, in the end, it will be reflected in the return statement. So if I were to do something like this, right, let's just change a few things here. The only thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add something, and remember, I'm gonna return again. So pretty much the same thing as I did in the on the top. And here, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna receive a value. So I'm gonna receive an object, right? And I'm gonna use this structure in here. So I'm gonna receive an object, and that's gonna be my link text, okay? Now my TypeScript is gonna complain about it because there is a type of, I haven't defined any type for it. So I could actually go ahead and just say that it's gonna be of type link text, which is a string, right? So all I'm gonna do in here, all I'm doing here is I'm actually just receiving an object as a parameter of this function. If I take this link text and I write it here, and before I actually write it here, let me show you here at the bottom, my IDE already started to complain because it's saying that you were actually expecting something, some property link text, but you're not passing this. So let me just replace this here. I'm gonna put link text like so. And I'm gonna save this. And as you can see, nothing pops up. And why is it so? Because I'm not passing the link text. So welcome to props. These are what props are. Props are basically information that you pass to a function component, and that they are received then as the an object parameter to that function. Now, if I save this, you see that my website is back, and I could actually add another header here at the bottom and say my awesome website, right? Once I save this, then I have two components here, or two HTML elements. I'm just gonna open the console. I'm gonna show you here. And got our first nav component, header and nav. It's not best practice, okay? You should have one header component. Nav, I don't know, but I mean, so we're thinking accessibility here, right? But anyway, because we are using the component, reusing it, and we have one of them, which is our first one. You see that this is plain HTML. This is also plain HTML, and we're able to customize the output of this HTML with the props. And that's pretty much it. The rest you're gonna find out as you work with React, but that's the basic idea. The basic idea is that React gives you a very smart library that helps you split up the HTML into components, and you can use these components and add a lot of logic to them so that they can become very interactive to the person working with them, or to the person interacting with them. Interactive to the person interactive. Anyway, cool. Actually, that's what I had to say about React components. I'm not gonna beat around the bush, and that's it, okay? We're gonna get an idea of how to perform. So for example, let's say here, we could actually perform, I'm just gonna write some comments, okay? We could perform some network request. And then here, maybe we can actually emulate that, but think we'll do it next time, or not next time, but maybe a little bit later, or whatever. Anyway, let's say we perform some network requests, and then while we are waiting for the response, we return a loading, right? We return a loading, and then when we receive the response, we return, or we show the response, right? So the idea here is that you would have something like this: if loading, then you would return some div with maybe the loading text, and if it's not loading, then you're going to move on to whatever next, and then you're going to return this value here. So here you would have some code, and the variable would be properly declared and so on. The idea is that you can have this data fetching stuff happening also inside of React components, and you can have a lot of business logic. Now, the only recommendation, and maybe we could talk about this in the next streaming, I think it would make sense, or in 2 streamings, I don't know, I need to plan a little bit. The only recommendation is that there shouldn't be any heavy operations here. Why is it so? Because this is UI thread, which means, let me just show you what's going to happen. If I can actually const now is equal to date.now, and then we're going to do it something like this: while date.now less minus now is so that's going to be if I want to have this less than 3 seconds, it should be like this, right? So now it's going to be, let's say, 1000, and then 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, and so on. This in milliseconds. So while this is happening, I'm just going to block this execution, and I'm curious about what's going to happen once I render this header. So I save this, and I come back to the page, and now let me refresh it. And as you can see, it takes a lot of time for it to appear, and when I click it, okay, I don't know if I should actually say bad stuff, but you get it, it blocks the whole thing. So that's the problem of the UI thread, and that's the problem of JavaScript being single-threaded. And that's what we're going to see in the next video, and some of the next streamings. How do we actually solve this, or different patterns when developing React applications, so that we don't need to face this problem, right? The idea is that your logic here inside of the header or inside of your React components, it should be cheap. You shouldn't be performing expensive calculations here within the UI components, because especially React, it renders stuff a lot of times. And when I say render, is simply it executes the body of this function. That's a render in React. Okay, whenever you read a render, it doesn't mean you're showing something on the screen. It means you are executing the whole body of this function here. This may not cause any changes in the DOM if the value of the return statement is the same. Okay, but this we'll also see in the future. Okay, cool. Hopefully you're still with me. I think I'm talking too much about React components, and I hope this was enough to give a brief idea of what React components are and how to use them. So you have the components here, and you can use them to actually customize the content, but still use the same structure. Okay, cool. So these are React components, right? And hopefully by now you got a good understanding of the props. We will definitely have a lot of props during this whole implementation. So let's move on to setting up the UI library, and have a little command here. I'm going to use the material UI package, and that's because it is a very mature design system, and I don't want to worry about design systems. Okay, I'm just going to use whatever we have here. So let me undo everything. And now we're going to start with the fun, because now we start with TDD in React. So we have added the packages. And now we are gonna add, so these 3 packages are basically necessary for the material UI. You also have emotion react and emotion styled, and these are for styling the components. And then we also have, and this should be beta.11, I think. We can actually check that out. So we have this one, maybe npm.js, or no, we have the GitHub here. We have the releases, and it's beta 11. Okay, so why am I using 14? And that's because that's what the recommendation of the documentation is. If I come here, and where do they have the documentation? Do they have it? Where is it? Okay, I'm gonna take the one from version 13, and actually this is a documentation here. It's a section of the user interactions one. And you see here, these docs describe user event 14.0 beta. This is still a pre-release. If you are starting or actively working on a project, we recommend to use this pre-release as it includes important bug fixes and new features. So we'll go with the pre-release. You could use the 13.5, but the behavior is going to be different. Okay, so cool. First thing, okay, we did it and did everything. Now I'm going to install this. We don't need to install anything else because we already did in the previous video. So now I'm going to just install this library. And what we're going to do now is we will actually put together a simple form. Okay, and we're going to talk about a little bit like really introduction to state management with React. Okay, now this is a very, very broad topic, and it's actually like the topic of state management in web application is not limited only to React, and the practices and patterns are not limited only to React. However, because React gives you so much flexibility, it doesn't impose any structure. It's not a framework, it's a library. Angular is a framework. Angular tells you exactly how you should do with the controllers and services and whatever. Okay, I'm not that familiar with Angular. React doesn't impose any structure, which means you are free to choose and you are free to make a lot of mistakes, right? I'm not saying I'm the best in state management. I'm just saying you should think about it. And then again, learning environment is perhaps the typical learning environment is not the best because it doesn't focus on this higher level concerns. You will get some use state hooks, and you have some use context hooks, and you will have some redux, and you will have some whatever. But why are you using it? And are you really thinking about the flow of data in your application? And these things are super important. They are like really crucial for you to understand how your application will behave. So with that in mind, we will start talking about this, and we're not going to cover everything today for sure. It's going to take a couple of streams, and it's going to be really situation based. Okay, whenever we reach the point where it's worth discussing about it, then we'll go and we'll talk about it. Cool. So we have everything that we need installed. So the block 2 is there, and the block 3 is actually also there. Let's start working. And for that, I'm not gonna run my server. Okay, I mean I can run it here on the side. Npm start, and that is just for, I don't know, sake of, okay, we have a React from scratch here. I don't like this. Maybe I can change the index.html because that's not React from scratch. That is productive me, right? Let's say unlock your full potential. Okay, anyway, yeah. Unlocking your full potential, like this. Cool. So now we should actually see the new title here on the top. I don't have any icon. Maybe I can put the icon later. Yeah, that would be nice. Anyway, we are gonna develop stuff. we are not gonna look at the browser. I don't know why okay, there we go. We're not gonna look at the browser. We're gonna look only at the running tests, okay? Test, watch. No tests found related to the changes. I can press A to run all the tests. And what I want to do with you now is I want to implement a basic form. So just a simple form. It's going to be an input field. It will have a button next to it. And every time I click the button, I want to add the content of that input field to a little list at the bottom. Okay? So this is the goal. And we want to do TDD, right? So first we want to change a few things here because this was a, let's say, mock test. And we would like to test the, I don't know, let's call it uproot component for now. And the first thing that we're going to say is that it should correctly display the created item on the screen. Okay, so now this goes away, and now we will start using our newly installed, where is it? It's here, the newly installed library, the user event library. So we're gonna import user event from React testing, or from testing library / user event. And we will have this little setup. So it's recommended that we just call it user event.setup, like so that we can then have a new session that we can interact with the browser, kind of with the screen. Okay. So let's think in terms of tests. Now we would like to have, first thing, we would like to have an input on the screen, and we would like to have a button on the screen, right? So what we would like to do is, let's say, const item description. That would be my screen dot get by role, and that's going to be the role of a text box. All right. So whenever we have inputs, the inputs, if they don't have a defined role, the role is going to default to text box. If I save this, our tests should fail because we don't have a text box here, right? So that's the first time that our tests are going to fail. There you go. It doesn't find. It just finds this. Now, if I come here to app.tsx and I create an input like this, input, and input is going to be imported from Material UI. Let's see if things start to look better. Yes, so the test is passing. So hopefully you are familiar with TDD, but TDD is basically you write tests, you make the tests fail, then you go and you write code and you make the tests pass. Then if necessary, you do a little bit of refactoring to clean it up. Then you go back to writing tests until the test fails, and then you write code until the test passes. Now, TDD by the book would be very strict. I don't think I'm gonna be so by the book here. So let's just keep moving. The important thing is that we test the behaviors that we want. Okay, so we want to have a text box, and then we actually want to have a create button. Okay, and the create button is going to be something screen.getByRole again, and that would be the button, right? So I would like to have a button on my screen. This by itself is going to cause the whole thing to crash because there is no button, right? There is only an input. So now I come here and I add a button, and once I add a button, I can actually add the button like this, create. Okay. Once I add the button with create, I think that should cause the whole thing to pass. Yes, perfect. Ignore these little lines here because these are stuff from this is stuff from Prettier, so you don't need to worry about it. And once we run the format stuff, that is gonna go away. Okay, so I got my item description and I got my create button. Now these are elements in my DOM. I can interact with them. And now it's the beauty of writing tests with a good library. And that's why I really like the user event, because when you read the text, the test, you really get a feeling of what the user is doing. Now, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna write await user event, and that should be async, right? So I'm just gonna make it async and an arrow function for simplicity. There you go. Await user event dot click the item description. So what is gonna happen? You imagine this on a browser, right? The user opens the page and then the user is coming with the mouse and it's clicking on the item description text box. Next thing that the user is gonna do is user event is gonna type some stuff on the keyboard. So that's gonna be my first item, right? And then what the user is gonna do is it will click on the button, right? So it will click on the create button. And look at this, isn't this nice? I mean, I'm just opening the test and I'm seeing, okay, this is exactly what the user is gonna do on the screen. And the cool thing about this user event library is that you can also simulate some keyboard, like pressing the backspace and keep holding the backspace, or press and keep holding the shift key. So there is a lot of stuff here, and we will use this a lot. I also would like to and actually, oops, sorry, here, my mistake, that should be user, and user, right? Oops. And that comes from this session here. So I'm gonna use this a lot, but I also want to implement, or I want to integrate some end-to-end testing libraries like Cypress or Playwright. I'm thinking which one, or Puppeteer, I'm thinking which one to integrate. I'm leaning towards Playwright, but I know that people like Cypress. I don't know what I'm gonna do, okay? So I'm not gonna promise anything, but at the moment, I think the user event library is gonna give us enough, especially because we'll stay some time without a backend, so everything happens on the browser. So the user event library is gonna give us a lot of power here to test full user journey, or full flow of user interaction. Cool. So once I click on the create button, what would I like to happen? Look at this, isn't this beautiful? Expect screen.get by text. And then I would like to see my first item. Actually, this can just be a simple text. First item dot to be in the document. And what's gonna happen here is that this test is actually going to pass. Okay, why is it going to pass? Do you have any idea? I mean, I think it's going to pass. Let's see. maybe I'm wrong, but I would expect this test to pass. Oops, I'm wrong. So okay, cool. So it's not here, and let me see what's going on. Okay, perfect. So as you can see, there is okay, cool. So that's nice, because I didn't implement the logic of the value here. So let's go back to the app and let's see what's going to happen, because here now, so let me formulate this a little bit better. We have typed some stuff here, but we have not properly implemented the logic to actually register this within the React component. Okay. So now let's see, actually, maybe what we could even try to do. Let me see one thing here. Expect, and this we can play around. Okay, it doesn't matter. I'm just curious about the output of the to have value here. So the first thing I would expect is the item description to have the value of first item, because I have typed first item with the keyboard. Okay, and then here, let's see if that is gonna work. I'm actually curious about it. Okay, so this is passing, right? So I have I have the item description has the value of first item. So now once I click on the button here, click on the create button, then I would expect, let's see what's going to happen here. I'm curious. The TDD is also very, or having the tests is also a very good way to exploring what's going to happen on the screen, right? So here you see that the item description, it has the value of first item. And what we would actually do now is then perhaps expect screen.getByText of first item to be in the document. Now, interestingly enough, if this fails, it means it's not getting the value from the item description. Now, if that is really how it should be, I'm not so sure, but we're gonna go with this and we're gonna try to make this pass. So I just want to have on the screen this element first item. How do we do that? Welcome to React state, right? So I'm just gonna return this whole thing, and stuff is still failing here. And I'm just gonna run the format just because we're messing up some stuff. So now what we want to do is we want to have some state which is persisted between different renders of this component. Again, remember what I said, render is an execution of this function, which returns the something. If you think about it, whenever you assign a value to a variable, this is going to always be reset to the initial assignment whenever you rerun this function. So if I had something like this, okay, const item description is equal to first task, okay, like this, and then I perform the update here, let's say we would call let, and then item description is going to be equal plus equal hello. Okay, now imagine that you just do this in your application. Okay, the first time it executes, you assign this to item description and then you append some hello string. I'm not saying you should do it, this bad practice, don't do it. But when you run it the second time, perhaps you would be expecting to have hello twice. Now, this is not going to happen because the function, the new variable is going to be refreshed every time you run this function. React has a very nice mechanism to persist this state in between renders, and this is called the use state hook. Use state. And here I'm just going to mark that this is a string, and I'm going to pass an initial state. Okay. Now, the use state hook, it returns two pieces of information. The first one is the actual value that is within this state. And the second information is a function that we can use to update the value of this first piece of information. So this is going to be preserved between re-renders of this component, and we can use this function to update this value here whenever we want. Okay, so now let's think about it. Okay, I would like to store the value of my input within this piece of state, so that whenever I click the button, I can take this value and add it to my list of item descriptions. Okay, so very simple. As you can see, this is pretty much HTML, standard HTML. And then here what happens is when this value changes on change, I want to have a little function which receives an event, right? And I'm going to prevent the default here just for the sake of not executing whatever default it is. And what I want to do is I want to set the item description to e.target, dot value, and that's not e, it's event, right? Event.target dot value, right? So what the hell is this? What the hell did I just do here? What I just did here is what is called a controlled component in React. Okay, the value of this component is controlled by some React entity, right? In this case, the state. It could also be a network call or something. The value is taken from here, and the onChange triggers an update to this value. So the component is not controlled by itself anymore. It is controlled by React, or at least the value of the component. Once I save this, and let's see what's going to happen with our tests. And it should, I don't know what's going to happen actually. I'm curious because my guess would be that that thing would work, but it didn't actually, and it doesn't. So that's pretty cool. So our test is actually still, and you see here's the value, right? So this is the difference. I'm gonna remove, let me just have a look here. What's gonna happen if I remove this? And I'm gonna save this, and I just wanna print stuff on the DOM for you to see what's going on. So here you can see that we still have an empty value, right? And that's very interesting because on the test, we actually wrote down first item. But at the moment we actually make this component controlled like so, then the value is actually populated. So let's give it another 10 or so seconds. And you will see that the value is actually populated. So if I scroll up a little bit, there you go. Here is my value, right? So now I can see that there is a first item written here within this input component. Now, once I click on this button, what I would like to do is I would actually like to save this value here within a list. So now let's see what's going to happen once we save this on the list, right? Or how could we actually save this on the list? So as you may imagine, this will be probably another piece of React state, and I'm going to put this here. I'm going to call this items and then set items. So the pattern is the same. And here we're going to work with an array of strings, right? So there we go, an array of strings which will start empty. Now, these items here, they will store everything that we would like to show on the screen here below the button. Okay, so let's have a look at how we can actually do that. And the easiest way for us to do that is simply to add an onClick function here whenever we press the button. So once we press the button, this onClick will be executed, and all the onClick will do is simply call the set items with the existing items and the item description. Okay, I'm gonna just leave it like so. And why am I getting all these things again? Is that prettier? That's again prettier. Okay, there you go. That looks better. Cool. So once I save that, it is still not enough for us to actually make our tests pass, because even though we are storing stuff in the set items here, we are not displaying it on the screen. So below the button, let's add a new list here, and we will map over our items. So we will have our items and we simply map over them. We will have one item and we will return a list item here. Now, whenever you map over something, you actually need to set a key in React, and that is used internally by React to identify whenever elements, to identify that the elements are actually the same between re-renders, okay? And maybe we'll talk about this later on, but the idea is if we don't add a key, you will see that it will complain. So I'm just gonna have a list item, and I'm gonna add the item here, and you will see, oops, item like so. And you will see that there is this little squiggly red line here, which says, please add the key prop for element in iterator, right? So we're gonna add the key and we'll simply call this item again. Let's see what happens. I'm gonna save this, and the squiggly line is still here because of prettier, not because of the error anymore. And let's see what's gonna happen. So hopefully the tests pass. Woohoo! Cool. Why do they pass? Well, because we are now adding the first item to the screen. Okay, so let me just fix this. And I think that this is actually a pretty good time for us to make a 5-minute break. Let's come back at 7:35, and then maybe we'll go for 25 minutes until 8, and we'll be done for the day. Okay, see you in 5 minutes, and have a nice break. Hello and welcome back. So let's wrap up what we were doing about React and our simple form. There are a couple of things I would like to do, and I think that now we can move a little bit faster because we have a basic understanding of what's happening here. So we have a state, and this state is used to both control the input, the behavior of the input, but also to show the items here on the screen. Okay, so what I would like to do is to continue with my test, and I actually would like to continue writing this test, right? So now we are able to actually display the item on the screen, and let's now continue here. I'm gonna click again on the item description, and I'm gonna type a second item, and then I will actually expect the item description to have a value second item. Wait, no. Okay, let's go here and let's see what's gonna happen. I expect that this is gonna fail. Okay, I'm gonna tell you, or maybe you already figured out what's the problem. Exactly. So there is a problem here, and hopefully, or maybe you can see it. If I scroll up a little bit, let's see here. You see that we expected the element to have the value second item, but what we received was first item, second item. And this is very interesting because what happens here is that by clicking on the button, at no point in time, we are actually resetting this item description variable. So it keeps this first item, and then it just appends this text at the end of first item. Okay. So what we should do actually is to change this little test here, because we would expect the item description to have an empty string afterwards. And this is going to fail, and we're going to fix that. Okay. So my interest is, what I'm trying to do here is, once I click on the button, I would like to add the first item to the list of items, but I also would like the item description, or this input here, to have nothing on it. I would like this input to be cleaned. So here it's going to fail, and you'll see that we expected to receive nothing, but we still have the first item. So what we will do here is, within this function to set the items, after we set the items, we will say set item description to an empty string. Once I do that, now at least the first part of my test should be passing. So this here should be passing. This here is still failing, because now we shouldn't have the second item here. Perfect. Exactly. So you see that we are failing here at line 25, and here I just need to quickly fix that. And now we should actually have a fully functional test. Let's see what's going to happen. There you go. Amazing. It's actually passing. Okay. So I think that this is actually everything we would like to do for this test. And now what I would like to do next is to create another test, because let's see what happens here. If I click again the create button, okay, and I'm gonna do, like, I'm gonna just give you an example here. This is not gonna be an example. This is gonna be like part of the next test, but I just want to show you what I have in mind. Get all by row, and here that would be a list item. So basically, I just want to take all the list items, and I want them to have length of 2. Why is it so? Because I don't want to create empty list elements. I don't want to allow my user to simply press the button and have an empty item description. If I have something like this and something in my app.tsx that has no validation whatsoever, you will see that this is going to fail, because we have actually 3 items, right? We created an empty item here. You will see that we have 3 items, and here is your empty list. So we want to avoid this empty list item. What we're going to do is we will not do this on this test, because this is going to make the test like we are testing two different pieces of functionality here. Just going to collapse this, and we're going to have another test. So it should not add empty items to the list. Okay, should not add empty item descriptions to the list. And this will be async again because of our user event library. And I'm gonna paste this here just for now, because I actually need to copy a few things. So I'm just gonna have the user and the render of the application. And we can have, again, we can just get the components here, and we can actually even have a few of the things coming from here as well. Okay, so there you go. Now this will fail, right? Because we have one. So the idea here is that, okay, let's do it like this. This is gonna pass actually. Okay, so this will pass because I'm pressing twice the button. I'm gonna have the first item here, but I will also have an empty item. So this should pass. Perfect, it's passing, awesome. Which is not so awesome because we would actually like to have one here, right? So what I wanna have is a little, so here I would expect my, where is it? Ah, it's collapsed. Okay, so here I would expect my item description to have value of an empty string. And then I'm gonna add a little comment here, and I'm gonna say tries to create an item with empty description. And I am not against comments, okay? Because imagine if you didn't have this comment. Now, okay, this is a long discussion. I'm not gonna go into it too much, but imagine if you come across this test and you simply see this flow here, and you say, okay, click item description, type some stuff on the keyboard, click on the create button. Is it click on the create button again? What did you have in mind? Like, what was on the mind of the developer when they wrote this piece of code, user.click create button? Did they forget something? Did they forget to set up before, or was this intentional? We don't know, right? And that's the problem. So here is where comments really come to help, because I am explicitly saying I am trying to create an item with an empty description. Now this becomes clear. Aha, okay, so this expect passes, which means I have an empty value, and then I click on the button and I try to create an item with an empty description, which is very explanatory, okay? It's one line of a little comment which adds a lot of context, and it's useful. Now, comments should be useful, okay? I'm not gonna comment every line. I'm just gonna comment the one that could cause some problems when other people are reading these tests in the future. Now, what I would expect here is this to have length of 1, right? So now I'm gonna make my test fail. Perfect, so now it's failing because I actually have 2, but I expect 1. Cool, so let's fix that. Here in the app, the only thing I'm gonna do is if item description is different than empty string, then I'm gonna add stuff to the items. Okay, and I can always, like, without really doing any check here, I can just run the set item description to null. But maybe that if it is equal to null, I don't need to run it. So if I put it within here, maybe I can save some function calls. Doesn't make a difference. Okay, this is called premature optimization, and you shouldn't worry about it. But now the test should pass, because now only if the item description is different than null, or different than empty string, I'm gonna add the items to the list. Okay, so isn't this pretty cool? I like this, and I like what we did today. I like the fact that we were able to write 2 meaningful tests. And another thing that we could actually do here, final one, let's allow the user to have duplicated task descriptions or item descriptions, okay? And that's maybe, I don't know, if you're creating a task or a project, maybe the name could be unique, but if you're creating a task, maybe you want to create the same task. It's okay, like I'm not gonna be that strict, you know, let the user decide. I don't know, think about a calendar. Of course you can create 2 events with the same name. So here it should allow the user to create items with the same description. So this is going to be async again. And I'm going to copy paste a lot of stuff from here. Now you may be wondering, okay, should I actually put all this in the same function? Maybe these 2 first things here, but the rest I wouldn't. That is my personal opinion. And for me, tests, they should present the necessary information for the context. Okay, so if I put, for example, these things in a separate function, and I call that function over and over again at the beginning of every test. So let's say that I just take all this and I put in a function and I call the function, right? Like function, because function is a reserved stuff. But if I call it func, maybe, because I'm learning Go, so func. If I call it func, then okay, now I realize about the very, very close to bad word, but it's not a bad word, so I'm on the safe side. If I call it, I don't get all the context that I need to understand what this test is doing. If I have things like this, then I can see, okay, the user went and clicked on the item description. Then the user typed something on the keyboard and then clicked on the create button. This gives me a complete context about the preconditions, the flow of this test. If I put this in a function and I call this function, then there are 2 problems happen. First, I start removing some important information from the test. I don't want to do that. And the second thing that it happens is that it creates a dependency, right? All the tests are dependent on the same function. If we change that function, a lot of tests may break, even if we didn't want that, even if we didn't mean that. The thing is, we want to avoid that, and the test should be really self-contained. You should have, at least from my opinion, okay, except if it's something like super like trivial, I don't know, setting up the database or something. So for example, here there is something that we could share, okay, but I'm not gonna do it. So anyway, close the discussion. Let's finish up this test and we are done for the day. So should allow the user to create items with the same description. And we have here the user setup. We render the app and then we take the 2 elements here. We click on the item description. We type first key. We press on the create button. And what we will do again is we are going to click on the item description again. And we're going to write again first item. And we're going to click on the button, right? And here I'm just going to add a little comment. Adds an item with the same description. So it's on purpose, right? It's on purpose that I'm duplicating the code. And here I would expect my screen dot, oops, what did I do? I think I pressed something. Okay, there we go. I would expect my screen dot get all by text of a first item to have a length, right? To have, not to have value, but to have length of 2. Once I save this, my tests should still pass. On TDD, you would argue, you didn't write the test, that failed. You shouldn't write the test. Yeah, I agree, and I disagree at the same time. Okay, you're free to disagree as well, and you are also free to agree. And if you disagree with me, then I'm happy to discuss that. So why not? The thing here is that I want to prevent my future me and future developers from coming here to app.tsx and doing something like this. If, right, if items.contain or includes, right, if not items.includes item description, then I'm gonna do that. Or maybe I could even add it here, right? If the item description is different than null and item does not include the item description, then I'm gonna add it, because you know there are very smart developers, and from the perspective of the developer, it doesn't make sense to add an item with a duplicate description. So why would they allow the user to add an item with a duplicate description? Because the developer doesn't, I mean, it doesn't make sense for the developer, so it doesn't make sense for anybody, right? Sorry for the little sarcasm, but the point here is the test should reflect the business requirements, not the developer preferences, okay? And if this test prevents future developers from steering the app in a direction that is not desired by the business, then there is value in adding this test, even if it passes, okay? Cool, so that's it actually. I'm gonna remove this and I'm gonna make sure that everything is passing. And you might be like, you haven't touched the browser. Does it work on the browser? I don't know. Let's see. That's the point of, oh, okay, there is my input. There is my create button. Whenever I create it, it doesn't execute without, when there is nothing. The moment I write something, first item, create, oh, there it is. And then it clears again. And if I type first item and I click on create, oh, there it is. So it works. If there is nothing, it doesn't work. Oh, surprise, right? The tests pass, which means the behavior is as we expect. Of course, there are a few subtleties with testing the behavior on the browser. And when we start getting to more complex scenarios, we need some more complex end-to-end tests. But for now, this is actually everything that we're gonna do. And there are some maybe functions here, inline functions and so on. Maybe you wanna get rid of them. You can go ahead. And the cool thing is that now you have all the tests you have to have confidence on the refactoring. You can go ahead and refactor, move stuff around as much as you want. If you don't break the tests, you're good to go, okay? Cool. So you can experiment, and you can even experiment by taking the functions here outside. And if you're a little bit more familiar with hooks, you know that you could use this inside of other hooks. So you could actually define a stable interface for these things. And that is actually what we're gonna do we will keep that in mind for the future, because see, the problem here with the use state is that, and that's what I hate about React. I mean, not hate, but that's one of the very small subtleties that can grow out of control very quickly. This whole component, the whole behavior, so 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, 4 points, they are all coupled to the use state function and whatever it returns. If we want to move away from use state, if we want to do a network call, or if we want to use context, or if we want to use Redux, then we need to change this, and we need to change this, and we need to change this, and we need to change this. Okay? Horrible. Tightly coupled, that's not the solution we want. Now, this is for example purposes. So as we evolve the application, we can actually use different strategies to really get rid of this pattern. Okay, but for now, I think yeah, my internal like emotion is saying like, go, do it. But I'm just, I'm done. I think it's time for us to stop. We have done a lot of good progress. Let's see what's happening here. npm run format, right? I'm gonna stop the tests and I'm gonna run the format, so everything is in order. I'm gonna run linting and everything should be in order as well, except if there is any, no, everything's in order. TSC check, everything should be in order. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add everything to the repository and I'm gonna commit this and I'm gonna say feature. What have I done here is I have added a simple add, right? Add a simple form with TDD, right? Let's wait for a bit until everything passes and we're gonna push this. And remember, our amazing pipeline should actually deploy everything to production. So I also changed the repository. Let's have a look at it. There it is. Do we have anything going on, or isn't this registered yet? I mean, I don't know. These are the old ones. Why isn't this working? Is this some, aha, yeah, sorry. I changed the main branch, by the way, the master branch to main, so I need to update the push branch here. Git add, git commit m core update push or trigger branch for CI, right? That should be enough actually. And I am going to push git push. Let's see if that's gonna work now. I'm gonna refresh everything. Aha, there it is. Now let's have a look at the details and hopefully, please pass. Let's see, give it some time. I hope you had fun today. I had a lot of fun. As you can see, there is, where is it? Come on, where are you? As you can see, there are a lot of cool things we can do with TDD, and it's much, at least for me, it's very, very interesting to develop it this way because what happened? Where is GitHub? Is it out? Is my internet out? No, my internet is still here. I consent, go. Is GitHub out? Huh, interesting. Let's see. Refresh this. I wanted to see it. Come on. Okay, it's out. Well, let's see if it will come back. Anyway, I think I'm gonna end here. That's really bad. So what I wanted to say about the tests, right? Let's go back to the tests. This is a super simple example that we could test most of the use cases on the browser. Now, not every user flow, not every use case is going to be as simple as this. Sometimes we'll have a lot of dependencies, or maybe we'll have a lot of steps. And by having TDD, by having the test-driven development approach, we can actually use, like, we don't need to replicate all these steps manually. Now you can imagine this saves a lot of time. And it's really, really important things are automated, okay? Because if we have things not automated, then we may easily forget something. Or if worst thing ever is like you spend 5 minutes replicating everything and then you click on the wrong stuff and then you gotta start everything again, right? It's horrible. So GitHub is not back. I'm sorry for that. Maybe there is an outage. Let's see. No, completely gone. So I think it's time for us to go as well. And thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for hopefully staying with me until the, it's back. Nice. There we go. So no, it's not time for us to go yet. Let's see. Okay, cool. So we got everything here. The only thing that's missing is we are deploying to Netlify. and it is live. Now let's have a look at our website. There it is, and it's working, right? First task. And once we create, there we go, first task. Amazing. So thank you very much. And I don't know if there is anything here that I actually need to hide. I don't think so. Run, This should be probably, yeah, GitHub workspace, dear test. No, I don't need to hide anything here. Doesn't seem to be any bad stuff. Yeah, I think everything is specify environment variables, hopefully, right? This is the beginning of the commit, so that should be good to go. Okay, cool. If there is anything here that you would like to use to exploit something, go ahead if you can make it and let me know how you did it, and I'm happy to fix it. Okay, cool. Back to the full webcam. Thank you very much for staying and for bearing with me and my bad jokes until the end. Next week we'll come back and we will bring this development further. Okay, have a great weekend and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.